Hi everybody. معلش العربي بتاعي يعني مكسر ف bear with me. I'm going to say it in English, and if there's something that you want me to slow down, and I will try my best to say it in Arabic, okay? But we have some slides up here, so hopefully, you know, the point hits home in Arabic. But do you guys all know what anxiety is? Yeah? Okay. And having an anxious child. So Dr. Dina asked me to talk about anxiety in our kids. And we all, every single one of us has anxiety. كلنا عندنا القلق. One to one degree or another, right? والعلق كمان, whatever that is. قلق, okay. Parenting an anxious child can feel really frustrating, very challenging. So I want to provide you a couple of tools on how to best understand anxiety, how to respond to your kids, how to approach your anxious child, okay? You're going to learn how anxiety works and learn strategies for helping your children overcome their fears, because that's really what anxiety is. It's fears. الخوف, القلق. And maybe understand some of your own anxiety as well, because we all have it one degree or another. So these are some of the things that, this is a rundown, an overview of what we're going to try to talk about today. There's a lot of information, so I'm going to try to go through it as quickly as possible and focus on the areas that I think will be really helpful. So what is anxiety? We're going to talk about that. Signs of anxiety in your child. What are the common sources of anxiety, and how to help your child who has anxiety. And then we'll take some questions and answers. So let's define anxiety, okay? It's an emotion characterized by feelings of tension, worried thoughts, physical changes like increased blood pressure, a persistent feeling of discomfort, and can cause or become caused by stress. Stress leads to anxiety, right? And we all know anxiety can also lead to depression. So it's really important to know and understand this. A lot of sources of anxiety. Believe it or not, besides school, social situations, some of us have really shy kids, right? Tests and things like that. One of the biggest sources of anxiety is you. We make our kids anxious, and we're going to talk about that, okay? I see this a lot in my office. It's the most common mental health issue. It is the most common mental health issue. 1 in 4 kids has it, anxiety, and it tends to run in families, right? So it's passed down. So really, we're going to talk about ourselves a little bit now. Many people are struggling with anxiety. A lot of all ages. It does not discriminate which ages. كل الأعمار. Thank you. خليك معايا. And if you're currently suffering from anxiety, right? So I was a little anxious today because I was running very late today. So I apologize for that. And I had my kid, because I was running late, my kids were running late, and everybody was late. And the way we handled the situation sets the tone for the evening, right? It is what it is. I'm late. There's nothing I could do about it. But if I'm going to raise my voice, lose my cool, yell at them to hurry up, what's going to happen? Nothing. We're still late. But I've ruined everybody's night, right? So have you ever wondered why you have anxiety? Why some of you struggle with anxiety? I want to give you some things to think about before we go through this whole presentation, okay? Think about, when did you start to become nervous, right? All the time, because it's persistent. على طول القلق, right? In some cases, anxiety can be caused by how you were raised. It's from mama or baba, right? How were you raised at home? Your upbringing has a huge impact on it. So here's a couple of signs. I notice this with people that walk through my door. They are self-critical. Self-critical. Like they are negative about themselves. أنا مش هنفع، أنا مش نافع، أنا مش عارف أعمل. Yes, عدم الثقة في النفس, right? Okay. Do you pick at your flaws? Do you criticize yourself? Are you hard on yourself for no reason? Maybe you're doing this because you had critical parents, right? One of your parents might have been critical. Your parents focused on your flaws instead of your strengths. They thought this was good to try to get you to change, to motivate you to change, to do better, right? Self-criticism is highly related to having anxiety. So you end up blaming yourself for things that are out of your control. You have low self-esteem, like right, it's the same thing. Did your parents maybe, or do you find yourself doing this at home? Because we all do this. Did you get compared to other people, right? Do you compare your kids to other kids? شوف هو ذاكر، شوف هو نافع، شوف هو قاعد ساكت ازاي، شوف هو شماس ازاي. This is not going to help your kids, right? Think about this. Growing up in an environment where you are constantly compared to others totally harms your self-esteem. It harms your self-esteem. You will feel bad about yourself. You'll feel like you failed your parents. And this low self-esteem will carry on with constant fear of not being good enough. By the way, comparison, المقارنة, you could take your المقارنة will either make you feel inferior, less than, أقل, or superior, أكتر, or like, puffed up. By the way, neither one of them honors God, okay? Comparison is the thief of all joy, as we know in the Bible. This is huge play in anxiety. Also, do you think negatively? Do you guys think negatively, or did your parents think negatively? I want you to think about this. Like, I want you to think about yourself and how you behave at home and what you carried through. If you constantly focus on the worst case scenario, أوحش حاجة ممكن هتحصل, right? What's going to happen? It changes your mindset, and your thoughts attract your beliefs, right? You'll find a problem if you look for it, for sure. So while it may be normal to recognize the worst case scenario in each situation, it can eventually lead you to only focus on the negative. Only focus on the negative. What's going to happen? Anxious kids tend to find a problem or a fear in every situation. You fear being judged. Think about this. Did your parents always have something negative to say about everything and everyone? Did they look for the negative, right? Having judgmental parents can have a significant impact on kids. Conditioned by a judgmental parent at a very early age, you're going to struggle with worry and fear of what others think about you, right? What do they think about me? I've seen kids that they're so fixated on what others think about them. And you doubt yourself. Do you doubt yourself at home? Do you find yourself saying things in front of your kids? Is this also language of anxiety? So, if you had parents, right? We all grew up in Egyptian households. If you had parents that yelled all the time, okay? Or worse, parents that hit, what happens? So we're raising kids with fear, not love. So we teach our kids to fear us when we yell, when we hit. So what happens to our children who are yelled at or who are physically punished? They develop something we call trauma responses. So and it's either fight, flight, or fear. So they fight, they talk back, and you think, الواد مش متربي, الواد بيرد, right? That's a trauma response. Or they flee, they escape, they avoid, they run away, or they freeze. They don't talk. They're shy, and you never know why they don't want to socialize, or why they're in a corner in church, or why they don't want to go to Sunday school, avoiding all social situations. Are they growing up in a chaotic household, or are they growing up in a peaceful household that honors and glorifies God? So do you relate to any of these? I wanted you to think about these things as you listen to the rest of this, okay? And I like being down there with you guys. بحب, أجيب وأودي and answer questions. And so I want you to be engaged and raise your hand and ask any questions, or ask me to pause if I'm going too fast. Some red flags, things to look for, okay? Anxiety is a problem if it impacts your child's functioning, okay? If the distress, the worry is out of proportion, it's too big to the situation. If they are easily distressed, and a big, big indicator is avoidance. Avoid. Do they avoid? What's a good Arabic word for avoidance? Yes. And somatic issues. We'll talk about somatic issues, meaning the body, physically. You feel it in your body, because your mind is connected to your physical body. Your mental health is connected to your physical health. They have trouble with sleep, overly responsible, too responsible, like everything has to be perfect, in perfect order, right? And if something is not in their schedule or something is out of place, what happens to an anxious child? They don't know how to handle it, right? Are they really clingy to you? Are they constantly, where are you? They need to be next to you all the time. And if they need excessive consoling, right? Always needing to be reassured. Let's talk about some physical signs of anxiety. Does your child complain of headaches, stomach aches, restlessness, meaning they're hyper, can't sit still? Okay, I have 3 kids. One of my kids, the youngest, he can't sit still for the life of him. He can't sit at the table, he can't sit during class, he has to stand. Do they have trouble falling asleep or staying asleep? Emotional signs of anxiety. So just so you know that these are not misbehaviors. العيل مش عايز يعمل حاجة غلط. They're struggling with something, but they don't have the maturity of an adult. Are they very sensitive? They cry a lot. Or do they anger easily? Constantly worried? Do they have major separation difficulty? Now, like when you تنزلهم في المدرسة and it's like, forget it. We're February, and still kids are struggling, leaving their parents and screaming and crying at the door. Major separation anxiety. Has frequent nightmares. Now, behaviors. Refusing to go to school, sits alone, avoidance. Avoidance is really big because this is something that we play into. We don't help the situation. Are they constantly seeking approval? Do they need to know, am I doing a good job? Did you see that? And not in a balanced way, constant. Do you find yourself constantly reassuring your child? I want you to think about this stuff. The frequency, the amount of time of symptoms can vary depending on each child, right? Some fears can be triggered by specific situations that make them really, really uncomfortable, or objects or settings. I'll give you some examples, okay? Types of childhood anxieties, I think I'm gonna go through this quickly, because I want to get to the big examples. Separation anxiety, like we talked about. Social anxiety, you find yourself like your kids refuse to go to parties or to Sunday school or to youth group, or just they don't want to go anywhere except stay in their home or hide out in their room or stay in front of the video game, right? GAD, generalized anxiety disorder. Do they have phobias of things? I'll talk to you about a client I had who had phobias of dogs, all dogs. Do they have panic attacks? These are all different kinds of anxiety disorders. I could go through them in detail, but we could table it and go towards the end, okay? How can we help? How can parents help? There's so many things we can do to help. So I want you to think of this as yourself. A frightened captain makes a frightened crew, okay? So if you're scared, if you're nervous, if you're stressed, what's going to happen in your home? Same thing. It's the same thing as what I shared today. I'm running late. Can I let them to move it quicker or to get to where they need to go quicker? It's not going to change anything. So the way I handled the situation sets the tone for the rest of the day. Have faith in their ability. They have more abilities than we think, right? Resist the urge to problem solve. When you orchestrate successes for your kids, they learn that they don't have what it takes to do it themselves, okay? Resist reassurance, the constant حاضر يا حبيبي, أنت أحلى واحد يا حبيبي, أنت أنجح واحد يا حبيبي. Resist doing that. They have to find their own way and plant their feet on the ground. You can say something instead. I hear you. I see that you are scared, but I believe that you could do this. Here it is in Arabic. I'll leave it on for a couple seconds, okay? So there's so much we as parents can do. I'm going to talk a little bit about CBT, so how we therapists treat anxiety. Good? I'll switch it. I see you guys taking pictures of it. Let's talk about the do's and don'ts first. Let him know, or her, it's okay to be worried. It's okay. We all get worried, right? Acknowledge their feelings. Don't dismiss it. Don't say بلاش كلام فارغ ولا ما أنت بتزودها. Listen to what they're saying. Acknowledge their feelings. Get his or her input and thoughts. I can't stress this enough. When you bounce this off to your child and ask your child, well, what would you do in this situation? And listen to what they have to say. They start to believe in their own ability, right? You're building them up and making them believe in themselves. And talk to them. Get their input and their thoughts. I ask my kids for their opinions about things all the time. I'll share a story with you at the end. Stay calm, okay? Because if you're calm, the rest of the ship is calm. If the captain is calm, the crew is calm. Reinforce the effort. Make sure you say, I saw how you tried. That was really good. I'm proud of you. You should be proud of yourself. Oh, here it is in Arabic. Thank you, Dr. Dina. I'll leave it up so you can take a picture. I have no idea what it says. It was the do's and don'ts, right? Okay. Don'ts. Don't avoid, okay? My oldest son, Alexander, he's 15 now. He's a gifted soccer player. And last year he was invited to play with some of the older kids, okay? And he was so nervous for some reason and avoided the practices and always found an excuse. He used to complain about his stomach. My stomach hurts. He avoided. And his dad, so tayyib, believed him. He said, no, Alex is not feeling well. All right, maybe next week. So I'm like, come here, Alex. We're going to practice. Get over there and you do your best. He was just nervous to be playing with older kids. He didn't want to embarrass himself. Had we let him avoid the situation, guess what would have happened? He would have believed that he didn't have what it takes, and would have avoided any situation that made him uncomfortable. We grow in the discomfort. We grow in the struggle. So you tell me when to pause. Yeah. Okay.
عايزين ترجمة دلوقتي بالعربي. اوكي. يعني في حاجات لو حد عايز ترجمة من هي بتقوله ارفعوا ايدكم وانا اترجم. اوكي. في حد عايز ترجمة دلوقتي؟ انت عايزة السؤال بتاعك. الترجمة حسب اللي هي بتقوله دلوقتي ان لما ابنها كان لما ابنها كان مش عايز يروح الماتش الكرة بتاعه، بطنه وجعاه، فعرفوا ان بطنه وجعاه عشان هو نيرفس، اللي هو عنده قلق اللي هو هيلعب مع العيال الكبيرة فمش عايز. فممكن الاب يقول اوكي ما تروحش، بس هو قال له نو نروح. هي اللي كلمته وقالت له هنروح وهتشوف ان انت هتقدر، مش نحميه ونقول له ان انت خلاص يا حبيبي معلش ما تروحش عشان انت قلقان على نو. ان هي ودته علشان يقدر يشوف ان هو يقدر يقاوم، وده العلاج، مش ان هي تحميه من القلق، اللي هي تخليه يقاوم ويروح ويشوف ان هو يقدر عليها.
Okay. Perfect. So this is what we as therapists use when we treat anxiety, okay? I gave you some tips for home, and I'll give you some more after, but basically, cognitive behavioral therapy, all of this right here that you see, all it is teaching yourself how to rethink the situation, rewiring your thoughts.
Cognitive behavioral therapy العلاج الطبيعي العلاج طبيعي للقلق ولحالات نفسية تانية. Cognitive behavior الواحد بيعلم نفسه الفكر يفكر طريقة متغيرة، اللي هي دي اللي لما بروح therapist لما تروح counselor لما تروح لسيلفيا أو لأي حد تاني counseling، العلاج بتاع الناس اللي هي العيال لما مش بيقدروا يعني عملنا كل حاجة في البيت ومحتاجة مساعدة، بنروح للثيرابيست زي سيلفيا واخرين ويعملوا حاجه اسمها العلاج الطبيعي، زي ما يكون لما يكون في واحد عنده جزعه في كتفه او رجله بيروح علاج طبيعي. برضه نفس العلاج في الاطفال وفي الكبار، حاجه اسمها cognitive behavioral therapy CBT، وده العلاج الطبيعي بتاع الدكاتره النفسيين، ان هو بيكلموا الشخص وبيحاولوا يغيروا الفكر بتاع الشخص من نفسه.
Okay, so I'll pause every couple of sentences, but I want to give you an example, okay? So this is science. This is not my opinion. This is facts. This is science, okay? There's an example of, I don't know how you'd say this in Arabic, but neuroplasticity, where basically you can rewire your brain. Your brain can grow, your brain can shift its thinking, but it's with practice and with effort.
ده اسمه مط يعني elasticity زي الاستيك، مط في الفكر وفي في المخ. نيورو العصب. فدي العلاج بيشتغل على الحته دي في الاعصاب، اللي هي المط والتغيير في الاعصاب في الفكر.
Okay, anxiety is not all bad. Okay, we actually need it. God gave us certain hormones, stress hormones, to keep us motivated to do things. So anxiety could be uncomfortable, but when it's disordered, when it's too much, it will get in the way. But anxiety is there to get us to avoid danger. Okay. Like everything else, it has to be balanced. So we're supposed to feel anxious when we're standing on the edge of a cliff. You're supposed to feel anxious. You feel it physically.
الخوف كويس، يعني المفروض لو واقف على حرف حتة عالية هتخاف، ده خوف يعني حاجة طبيعية اللي احنا تحمينا.
It keeps us safe, exactly. And they are there just for that, to keep us out of danger and to keep us safe. The problem becomes when it's always there. It's not good for you. It's not supposed to be in your body all the time, and it becomes unbalanced.
لما يكون موضوع موجود على طول يبقى مش موزون.
Okay. So I'm going to talk to you about an example, okay? All right. Let's talk about one of my clients who was afraid of dogs. And her sister had a dog, a little tiny, cute little dog that barely even barked or did anything, okay? And this is just one example. She would get so anxious and physically sweaty around these dogs, even her sister's dog. She couldn't make herself go to her sister's house with the dog. She was never attacked by a dog, never bitten, but her anxiety made her think all dogs are dangerous. I'm going to get hurt. I have no control over these dogs. So she developed a phobia of these dogs.
عندها خوف من الكلاب. ناس كتيرة هنا أعرفهم شخصياً عندهم خوف بالانكزايتي، أعراض الانكزايتي اللي هو النبض السريع والقلب السريع والعرق وخوف فعلاً بيحصل طبيا كمان.
So the best thing to do is not to avoid the situation. So her and I worked on slowly introducing the idea of going to her sister's home first and visiting when the sister's holding the dog, right? A tiny little dog, no threat to her. We can't avoid the situation, so we slowly introduced this situation, the fear. And it became something that she became comfortable with over time.
لما راحت لأختها اللي عندها الكلب شوية اتعالجت والخوف بتاعها راح بعد مدة، بس شوية بالطريقة يعني راحت لها وفي الآخر هو اتعالجت من نفسها عشان راحت والخوف راح بعد مدة.
Because she developed enough courage and enough desire. It doesn't mean that she doesn't have the fear still, but she chose to go and face this fear because it was really becoming a problem. She couldn't deal going to her sister's home, so she didn't see her nieces or nephews. She avoided parties.
So هي عالجت نفسها عشان هي اختارت، عملت الاختيار ان هي عايزه تتعالج عشان كانت بتأثر في حياتها، مش قادره تزور ولاد بنتها اختها، فهي اختارت ان هي عايزه تتعالج.
So CBT, what we're talking about up here, it works in identifying and addressing how a person's thoughts and behaviors interact together and create anxiety. We work with our clients to help them recognize how all of these negative thoughts influence their feelings and their behaviors.
CBT بتشتغل مع ازاي الفكر بيتحول للعمل، وبيحاولوا يشتغلوا مع بيعالجوا الشخص ليغير الفكر عشان يقدر العمل تتغير كمان، وهي ده اللي بيعملوه في الكونسلنج والثيرابي.
So I'll give you an example, a situation. I have to give a presentation in front of a large group, right? My thought, I'll give you two different ways of thinking. My thought will be, I'll practice and I'll do great. That's my thought. So then my emotion becomes confident, right? And then my behavior is I practice and I complete this presentation without a problem. See how your thoughts dictate your outcome?
So الأفكار بتاعتها الأول قالت لها اللي هي عندها حاجة محاضرة تذيعها، فالأفكار بتاعتها يعني إحساسها قال أوكي أنا هذاكر وهشوف وأوضب عشان أقدر وأقاوم وأقدر عشان أعمل كويس في المؤتمر اللي أنا هديه. ففي الآخر هي الواحد اشتغل وعملت وخلصت وانتجت وخلصت وعملت. فالفكر وبعدين الإحساس الإيموشنز اللي هو الإيموشنز إحساس and then العمل. فبيجي 3 حتت الفكر بعدين الإحساس بعدين العمل. فهم بيشتغلوا على ال3 دول، يجوا من الإحساس من الفكر للإحساس للعمل. هو دول ال3 اللي بيشتغلوا عليهم.
Okay, or I had a really busy, kind of crazy day today. I could have said, you know what, I didn't have time to practice. I'm going to make a fool of myself in front of everybody because I'm not prepared. That's my thought. So what is my emotion? I become anxious and I become worried. And what happens to my behavior? I don't practice, I put it off, I avoid it, and I try to get out of doing this presentation.
وممكن العكس بقى، ان انا يكون عندي حاجه مطلوبه اعملها بس عندي مشغوله وعندي حاجات كتيره وعندي حاجات يعني stressful ودلوقتي عندي قلق ومش عايزه اعمل واغير. في الاول فكري اقول انا بقول لنفسي ان انا ما عنديش وقت ومش قادره، ده فكري. بعدين احساسي اللي انا تعبانه وخلاص مش قادره عليها، والاحساس ده اللي هو القلق. وبعد كده نمبر 3 اللي في النهايه مش هتكون في نتيجه كويسه، مش هنتج ومش هعمل وهنكش من الطلب. يعني هي دي العكس، لما يكون عنده حد عنده قلق بتغير هي بتبتدي بالفكر، بتغير الاحساس وبتغير العمل.
So we talked about how anxiety is not always bad, right? But when things are off balance in any situation, that is never a good thing. So too much anxiety, too much worry makes us stressed and anxious. And no worry and no thoughts about preparing leads to no motivation, right? I'll practice and I'll do great. That's a good sign. But say if you have a child that has no anxiety, no worry, no thoughts about even being motivated, like they say, I have a presentation, whatever, I'll wing it. I'll do it the last minute. Is that good? No. I have one of those. He's a procrastinator. He does things at the last minute every time. Moderate anxiety, in the middle, it means I know I could do this, but I have to be prepared. I'll plan and I'll practice. See how it's good in the center, in the middle? High anxiety. This is too much. I'm going to look like a fool. I need to get out of this. And all you think about is how negative, everything's negative, and to get yourself out of this situation. So your thoughts versus your feelings. How children know that they are worried. You have to help them identify their thoughts versus their feelings. Worry makes you think of what you're afraid of rather than what's actually true. So we have to identify this stuff. Put the worries into words by asking your child questions. Is this in? Oh.
So بتقول الساعات الخوف بيغطي عن الحقيقة، فخلي يعني لازم نخلي الحقيقة separate أو متفصلة من الخوف، عشان ده ممكن بيأثر على الحقيقة اللي بيحصل.
So an example is focus on facts versus what is feared. I have a child who's very afraid of shots, going to the doctor's office and getting shots. I won't tell you which child it is, but he's the older one. And he gets sweaty and wants to avoid going, and it's become such a problem. The nurse actually has to hold him down. So I'm like, you know what? You know you need to get this. This is necessary for your checkup. It's going to last a second, and we're done. You're thinking about it for this long. You're making yourself anxious and worried. So I just talk him through facts versus fears. That's good. Okay. All right. So let's talk about some goals and what we can help our kids do. Okay? When our kids are anxious, it's very natural that we want to protect them. We want to make them feel better. But by protecting our kids from things that upset them, you accidentally make the anxiety worse. How do you do this, okay? The best way to help your kids overcome anxiety is to teach them how to deal with it when it comes up. Because life is not going to be a straight line like this. Of course, there's going to be things that we get nervous about and worry about. We have to teach them how to cope, okay? With practice, they will become less anxious, okay? You can show your child empathy without agreeing with their fears, okay? You don't have to agree that their fears are founded, but you could still be kind. It doesn't mean that we just agree so we could, get them to stop being anxious or stop crying. These are the moments that are really important, okay? As parents and as servants, what's the most powerful tool we have? What is the most effective tool as a parent? Raise your hand and say it out loud. As parents and servants, what do you think the most powerful tool you have is? I didn't hear you, sorry. Say it again. It's hard to hear with the masks. Love, yes, absolutely. Anybody else? The most powerful tool? Rewards and punishments. Oh, we could talk about that too. Yes. Hugs? Oh, I love a good hug. Yes. Patience. Very, very powerful. But you know what? I want somebody to get it. Dr. Eheb. God is the most powerful tool we have. But what does God give us as parents? What does he give us in our tool chest? As a parent, as a servant? The Bible. And how do we live love and the Bible and patience and all the virtues and all the fruits of the Holy Spirit? We model it. You can read as much as you want. You can come to church as much as you want. You can check all the things that you think you are doing. But if you don't model the values and virtues of the kingdom of Christ, your kids know it. They are always learning, and we are always teaching. You got cut off on the highway. How are you going to handle that? They're watching. I have 3 set of eyes watching me in the back. How I respond, right? I'm always modeling how to handle things. I model how to handle stress. I model how to handle struggle, everything, okay? That's the most powerful tool you have. Parents can model healthy ways of dealing with anxiety. If I get too anxious, and that's okay, but what's going to happen with the kids? What am I teaching them, right? The goal is to show your children that anxiety is normal, and it doesn't have to be a really big deal, okay? Don't avoid things just because it makes your child anxious. This is huge. Avoidance is huge. You don't realize you're playing into your child's anxiety. Do not pave the road for them and make them comfortable and avoid things that make them uncomfortable. Pull them out of their comfort zone, and it's okay. As long as you provide the guardrails and safety, but you cannot orchestrate successes for your kids, right? Remember that, I don't know if you remember, that a few celebrities paid college entrance boards for their girls to go into these Ivy League schools, and they paid a lot of money. The kids didn't get into these elite schools on their own, but mom and dad, paved the way for them and used their power and their money to get in. What do you think is going to happen to these, aside from getting caught, because we can't hide from God, what do you think happens to these kids? Do they believe in themselves? Do they have the ability to get through a Yale program or a Harvard program? No. So you are removing the struggle from your children is not going to help them in the long run. We grow in the struggle. We thrive when we learn we can do this, and we got through the struggle. Does that make sense? You need Arabic? No?
هي بتحاول ان هي اللي احنا لما الواحد عنده قلق او تعبان في موضوع او خايف من موضوع، يعني مش مفروض نشيل منه القلق او نشيل منه الخوف او نشيل منه الحاجه اللي هو خايف منها نروح نبعدها منه. نو مفروض هو النمو بتاعه والتحسن بتاعه هيكون ان هو يكون عنده الاكسبيرينس ويمر باللي هو خايف منه، مش نحميه منه، بس نخليه يمر بيها، يمر بالتجربة، يمر باللي هو خايف منها، وهو ده اللي هيخليه يكبر ويتعالج ويكون يعني الخوف ده يروح والقلق يروح. مش اللي احنا نشيل منه الحاجة اللي هو خايف منها أو نمنعه من الموقف اللي هو خايف منه. العلاج إن هو يمر بيه، وهو ده هيخليه يتحسن وهيخليه شخص أحسن. لما يطلع من التجربة ويعمل التجربة وبعدين لما يطلع منها هيكون قوي، مش تشيله الحاجة اللي هو خايف منها.
Express positive. Remember, do not focus on the negative, but express positive but realistic expectations, right? You can't promise your child that their fears are not realistic, right? They won't fail an exam. They might fail the exam, especially if they avoid and put off preparing, right? Maybe they're not going to have fun at ice skating, but they have to try, right? Or another child won't laugh at them. Maybe they will get laughed at, but that is not a reason to avoid. Let your child know this may happen, but give it your best and be positive and notice the effort. Respect their feelings. Please respect their feelings. Dr. Philip Mamalakis, he wrote in his book, Parenting Toward the Kingdom. I love this part of what he wrote, and it really changed my perspective on how I deal with my kids. He said, our kids are icons of Christ, and we have to venerate them. So next time we think about yelling or losing our cool or hitting, remember your children are icons of Christ. We have to respect their feelings, but we don't empower them. We don't coddle and say, you're 100% right. You don't need to go to that party. Stay home and play your video games if that's what you want. خلاص يا حبيبي. خليك أنا مش عايزاك تتضايق. That's not going to help your child in the long run. This is important, and I want to teach you how to do this. So don't ask leading questions. For example, are you anxious about your big test? Are you really worried about your big test? Are you worried about the science fair? I want you to avoid that. I want you to say, how are you feeling about the science fair? How do you feel about the tests? Do you feel like you prepared? That's all. Calmly and confidently. Don't reinforce their fears, okay? What you don't want to be doing with your tone or your body language, maybe this is something that you should be afraid of. You don't want to send them that message. Let's say the child has a negative experience with the dog. Next time they're around the dog, you might be anxious about how they're going to respond, okay? You're anxious. They feel it. So the message will be, dogs are all dangerous. Encourage your child to tolerate their worry. Encourage them that they have what it takes to cope. Believe in their ability, right? This is really, really important, because if mom and dad don't believe in themselves, in their children, what's the message being sent? I can't do it. My parents don't even believe in me. There is some kids that don't even have families, some kids in foster homes, some kids who don't have the blessing of a family. But if they had one caring adult who believed in them, they hang on to that, and that's what gives them the ability to cope with their struggles and the ability to be resilient in their difficulties. So kids grow in the context of caring adults, whether it's in servants or home, whatever it is. So keep that in mind. And try to keep this period short. So my son who's afraid of shots, I'm not gonna like prepare him that he's about to get a couple of shots 3 days before. There's no reason. He's gonna be anxious about it for 3 days and find every way to avoid it. Keep it short. It doesn't have to be this difficult. So one more. Okay. Think things through with your child. This is so important, okay? Think things through with your child. Problem solve. Ask them what they would do in this situation. Show them that you believe in their ability to think. Try to model healthy ways of handling anxiety. This is super important. We talked about this. And now, point the way to Christ, okay? Pray with your children every day, no matter how tired you are. Keep their hearts centered on Christ and their minds focused on the long-term goals. This is paramount, period, in building strong homes. Our goal for when our children grow up, that they will carry Christ and his church in their homes. This is the influence that you want, okay? We want our kids to taste what's eternal. So we have to start with the end in mind, and the end is the kingdom. You are their biggest influencers. Look, I'm going to give you a bunch of recommendations for books for your kids. I think Sunday school is out, right? And feel free to take picture. There's a couple of pages of books and of apps that you could download on their phones, helping them to deal with anxiety. And no matter how many books I have to read a lot for my work, and I like to read. But I can tell you this, no matter what you read, every answer is found in the Word of God. I always end up turning to the Bible for my answers. So read as much as you want, but live out the Word of God. Here are the books. If you want me to keep them up, if you want to take pictures, and then there's a lot, okay? And there's some apps as well. And I think we're going to take questions now. Glory be to God forever and ever. Okay. Okay. How could I know my child's anxiety and how bad is it? In other words, when should I be worried and at what point? So we talked about this earlier. If a little bit of anxiety is okay, it keeps you motivated, it keeps you safe. But if the anxiety is becoming disruptive in the day-to-day life, school, sleep, appetite, those are big indicators, then we know we have a little bit of an imbalance. It's not moderate anymore. So that's when you should be worried. Is it persistent? Is it constant fear? This is when the red flags that we had up earlier are really important to start noticing. This case is that you have to start talking to your child about the feelings versus fears and get a sense of where they are and where this anxiety is coming from, right? And help them through that. And then do all the things that we listed. Talk to them, find a solution with them, tell them what the facts are versus the fears. Some of these fears are not facts, right? No, you're not going to pass every single test, but what makes you think you will fail it if you prepare for it? I believe you can do it. Give yourself some time. That's it. Don't feed into the anxiety, but solve with them. But definitely have the conversation, for sure. And if it becomes problematic, the worst thing you can do is avoid. Do not avoid the situation because it makes you feel uncomfortable, okay? My son likes cleanliness and organizes everything. Your son is after my heart. If anything is moved out of place, it will be a problem, which becomes a kind of phobia. He gets scared of everything. So, how old is the son? This is tough to answer because I kind of need a little bit of a background of age and like what's happening. Is the son diagnosed with something? So, when we develop phobias and when we have to have everything in order, this is called OCD, right? Obsessive Compulsive Disorder. And OCD is absolutely part of anxiety. So your son has likely developed anxiety that will need some help if this is a persistent thing in his younger years. So I encourage you to speak to him, and I speak to a counselor and speak to someone in his school and see if this is carried out through his school, okay? You're the expert on your son, by the way. I'm not the expert. Dina's not. You as a mom and dad are the experts on your kids. God gave you this gift of parenthood and of intuition and instinct to keep you as the expert of your child. So if you feel something is wrong, something is wrong.
اوكي ثانك عشان بس الوقت عشان في اسئله مش هنقدر نرد عليها دلوقتي. One is how to deal with a stubborn child if he's very nervous. Another question is you have one, it's the same house with 3 children, but one of them is the one that is having a problem, like stubborn, anxiety, but it's not the parent, like it's not always the house environment. How come if it's the house environment, 1 out of 3 kids are the problem?
I don't know that it's a problem. I have 3 kids. They're all different. It's not one size fits all. They all have very different personalities. So my oldest son is the procrastinator. He does things at the last minute. If you want to call him stubborn, we can call him stubborn. But he's also highly intelligent. He's a really smart kid. He has to figure things out on his own and do it on his own time. And when he does do it, he does it well. So I can't parent him the same exact way as I parent my daughter. My daughter, for example, she's a hard worker. She works really, really hard, and her grades are very important to her. I don't have to tell her to do her homework or study or any of this. She already takes it upon herself to do it, but she has to work hard for it. So they are parented differently. My son can't do all the things he wants to do until he gets his work done. My daughter, however, I don't have to watch her as much. So if she wants to take a break and watch a movie, she absolutely earned it. So I caution you against thinking that they're all going to be the same in the same household. My 3 kids could not be more different than each other. And I'm sure it's the same in your home. Is that?
Yeah, we have questions about ابني مش عايز يذاكر أو ابني خايفة بنتي خايفة من اللي هي بتجيب A بس برضه خايفة والمذاكرة والحاجات دي والخوف about المذاكرة دي like Sylvia said في خوف كويس في قلق كويس لما القلق يكون علشان هي عايزة تجيب نتيجة كويسة ده قلق كويس بس احنا بس نطمنهم أهم شيء لما يكون في قلق علشان حاجة واحدة معينة أوكي أنا قلقانة بس مش بتأثر على كل ناحية في حياتها مادام مش مأثرة في نومها وأكلها ومش بيجي لها يعني مش عاملة مشاكل عامة في حياتها القلق ده أوكي طبيعي في أسئلة على الولد عنده أصحابه مش كويسين ولما مش مع أصحابه بيكون عصبي ده عادي العيال محتاجين أصحاب العيال محتاجين اللي ما عندكمش عيلة وما عندكمش هنا اعملوا نفسكم عيلة جيبوا أصحاب بنفس السن بعيالكم عشان ما يكونوش زهقانين ويكون عندهم لازم يكون عندهم أصحاب وولد تاني ورقة تانية تقولي ابني 12 سنة برضو 14 سنة مش قادر يقعد ساكت عايزين على طول يتحرك لو في بلد تانية هيكونوا في الشارع بيلعبوا طول اليوم، ما فيش حد عيل بيقعد ساكت. ده في حاجات هنا طبيعية. العيل الشقي طبيعي، العيل اللي بيكون عنده شخصية قوية وبيتعب أهله عشان شخصية قوية، دول بيكونوا أحسن عيال. فمش كل قلق ومش كل عيل بيدي ماشي يعمل مشاكل يبقى عنده حاجة غلط. في أسئلة كثيرة مش هنقدر عشان العيال طلعوا. موضوع اللي هو مش عايز يذاكر ده عادي، بس لازم تكلموه وتفهموه. ودي يمكن عايزة قعدة تانية مع وقت تاني، ممكن نرد على الحاجات دي بعدين. في سؤال اللي هو عنده ADHD، ابني عنده ADHD وعنده حاجات بيعملها غريبة. دي عايزة قاعدة مع دكتورة أو حد عشان نفهم. في حاجات بيكون في عيال متشخصة بأمراض نفسية بيكونوا وراها حاجة تانية. ولعلمكم السوشيال ميديا والتي في والحاجات اللي على طول هم مش بيتكلموا ناس، على طول بيتكلموا شاشة بس، دي بتسبب anxiety. دي كمان حاجة كبيرة. عشان احنا طبيعتنا مش نكلم شاشة، المفروض نكلم بني آدم. واحدة تانية اللي هو ابني مش he doesn't fit with other kids. He has his own way. لو هو مش عايز يكلم عيال تانية وهو عايز يكون مع حاجات طريقته هو، دي هو شخصيته. as long as هو مش مسبب مشاكل في المدرسة وبينام كويس وصحته كويسة وبيعمل حاجات functioning كويس في مجتمع عادي. مش كل عيل عايز يكون عنده 20 صاحب، في عيال صاحب واحد كفاية. في أسئلة يعني مش قادرين يعني نرد بالتفاصيل. لو في حد حالة يعني معينة ساعات كنت عايزة قاعدة ونعرف ونشوف ونكلم. وانتوا لو مش قادرين تتكلموا مع عيالكم عشان تفهموا، يبقى خلي حد counselor or therapist يساعدكم. عشان العيال خلاص، مع العيال حلوين قاعدين كويس.
They're actually very good. So it's really important that all these questions, I will still put it, if you sit with me, I'm gonna ask, well, how are you? What's your situation at home? How do you deal with this? Are you managing this okay? Because it starts from the top down. So all of these questions about your kids, I can't give you definitive answers until I get a very clear understanding of what's going on with you, mom or dad. So it's important that we center ourselves and find the right balance and know that struggle and anxiety is okay and it's healthy. And when it's not, there's very good help to get. So don't be afraid of asking for help.
Thank you so much, Sylvia. هنعمل parenting meeting تاني إن شاء الله على ADHD والhyperactivity، ونرد على أسئلة بتاعتكم اللي النهارده ما كناش قادرين نرد عليها. موضوع العيال اللي حركته كتير واللي عنده hyperactivity واللي مش بيسمع كلام. نعملها مرة تانية إن شاء الله. Thank you so much, and it was a blessing for us. And ربنا معاكم وربنا يحمي